coffee breaks and lunch, whenever you like. If you want to, you can go there now. I don't recommend it, but you can go. There's a little sauce, and there's chips, and we dare you to taste it. Just that. When you do, we'll be there to take some photos if you like. It will be fun. So, with that in mind, let's start with Sergi comes from Barcelona, right? To do some awesome stuff and show us some awesome stuff. You have the stage.
Hello? Yeah. Can you hear me? Okay. Welcome to my speak. I'm Sergi Martínez. I'm coming from Barcelona. I normally do conferences with GDG Barcelona. I'm an Android GDE, Google Developer Expert. It just basically means that I go to a lot of events and I do a lot of speeches. It doesn't really mean that I'm better than the others in Android. In fact, I'm not. Okay. I work mainly on research and development in a company called Worldline. And I'm going to say something that it's strange that nobody said before today. We are hiring, so if somebody wants to come to sunny and beautiful Barcelona, you will be welcome. Just contact me, send me your CV, and I will get 2 days of holidays if you go. Okay. Today we're going to talk about Android data binding. It's a new library that was introduced by Google in I/O 2015. It doesn't make a lot of noise, but it could be really important in the future. How many of you are Android developers or know Android? This is a very technical presentation with a lot of code. The non-Android developers, you're allowed to sleep. I won't get mad about it. Okay. As I said, this library can change a lot of things on how we work on Android. According to Google, data binding is a way of writing declarative layout and minimize the glue code necessary to bind your application logic and layout. According to Wikipedia, it's all this. Okay. The basic idea of data binding, probably you're used in other languages. One of the reasons I choose to talk about this topic, there are 2 main reasons. One, in the past I used to work with .NET. I was young, I need the money, I didn't know what I was doing. And .NET has data binding from the scratch, from the beginning, okay? And it was really powerful, it was really cool, it was a really good way of working, especially in Windows Presentation Foundation, I remember, okay? So when I saw that they were releasing this library, I said, finally, they're doing it, okay? Also, one of my previous presentations was about Android web views. I prepared the presentation, I give the speech, and they released a new web view the next day. So this time this is in beta, so now I'm going to talk about this and I expect to do this presentation a lot of times. As I said, this is beta, this is new, and I don't know if this will continue, this will die, or what will happen, but I think it's interesting to keep an eye on it. Before talking about the data binding, we need to talk about inflation in Android. Inflation is the process used for all that never work with Android. In Android, interfaces are declared via layouts. Basically, it's an XML file that declares all the interface, and then you inflate this interface. Basically, inflating an interface is transforming these XML tags into proper objects and attach them to the main window of the application. This is a very critical process that needs to be really doing a good performance, but it's a process that we can hack. Okay. Normally, the inflator, there are other ways, but you call the layout inflator that you get from the system. Sorry. Or in the onCreate method on main activity, when you do the Setcontentview, internally it does the inflation. Okay. If I dare you to try to find where it does it in the code source of Setcontentview, because thousands of things are happening inside here. So in this moment, what it does is it's taking what it's called the default inflator factory, and this inflator factory is responsible for creating these objects. Basically, the inflator, the first thing that it does is it parses the XML. In fact, if you go to the source code and check the part that it's parsing the XML, it clearly says, do not touch this. It's really, really good code. You won't do it better. Sorry, my head is too big for this thing. Okay, and then it does something that the first time I saw it says, what the hell are they doing? They try to inflate this tag adding text in front. So it finds, for example, text view. So it says, okay, I'm going to try to create an object called Android widget text view. It works. Hooray. Next one, web view. I'm trying Android widget text view to create to create a class called Android.widget.webView. It crashes. So it gets the exception, tries the next one. Android WebKit WebView. Hey, it works. And every time you use your custom, sorry, this is killing me. Your custom tags, it will fail twice, and then your tag will work on the third time. The first time I saw it, I said, but this is not optimum. This is what you're not doing in another way. You're catching on. So I did some tests, and finally, what I found is that yes, this is the best way of doing it. It's the fastest way, just because it's Java. And finally, when it works, it creates the object, it fulfills everything, blah blah blah. And if it fails, it crashes. I mean, as I said, this is a critical process, and if something fails here, everything goes bad. Okay, we can do a custom inflator, as I said. Basically, what we do, it's before performing an inflation. No, it's okay. It's okay. I will just do doing funny movements all the time. Basically, what you say, it's okay, from now, the inflator will be this one. You say set factory, and you put your phone inflator factory. It's one I created. That I will explain the purpose later. And from this point in this activity, when I do the Setcontentview, it will use my inflator. Going very quick through this process because it's not the really important one. Okay. This is a code that it's hacking this process. This is a phone inflator factory. I went to the source code, I got the phone inflator factory, I made a copy and just hack it. Why I did this? This was a very old project that we needed to change fonts around the whole project. Our designer was crazy. We had like 5 different fonts in the whole application. It was madness. So what we decided is to change the font during the inflation process. This is just accept. So basically what it does, it goes for these packages array, that is the 3 packages I show you. It was widget, WebKit, and nothing. For each one of them, it tries to inflate. If it does a catch, it does basically nothing because the parent will try to work with it. And then it creates the view, context name, package, and the attributes. Here is the point where it crashes. And then what we do, what I did, the hack that we introduced, or the custom code, was saying, okay, if you successfully created it, so it's not null, then I will post a new job to change the font. Why posting and not doing exactly here? Because after this process, it comes the formatting of the object. If you change some format here, your settings or styles will overwrite it. So you post it in the handler and it will happen at the end. If you want to check this process, I made a project in my GitHub. It's very old. It's still from Eclipse age. I don't know if it works with the latest Androids. I never touch it again. But if you want to check at it, it's easy. I think it doesn't keep in mind fragments even because it's so old. Okay. I also write a nice article explaining everything, but my website was hacked, and of course I didn't have backup, so I lost it. Okay, now let's start talking about data binding. But as I said, a big warning. This is in beta state. Okay, it has bugs. It will change or not, who knows. Maybe it's never released. Do not use in production, please. Do your experiments, play with it, but do not use in production. Okay? I know some of you will do it. I don't know why I say it, but okay, so what happens when we're doing data binding? The first thing that we need to do is add the data binding library. Then we apply binding to our layouts. We create what it's called the data binding object that will be the responsible for all the binding. And then we do the binding. So it's 4 simple steps. Let's review each one of them. Can you read the text, right? Size? I change it from 3/4 to 16:9 and bit things. Oh, change it a bit. So, basically we have to add 2 dependencies. First one, to the data binder tool, What it does is basically it helps the compiler to create some classes on the fly. We'll show you later that some of the classes used are just created on compilation time. And then we have the data binding library itself. No, I'm saying otherwise. This is the plugin, this is the library, sorry. And we just sing and magic happens. Okay. So let's try the simplest example. You know that when you create a new Android project, you have the hello world string. That's the case, the layout. I remove some of the tags to make it easier, but basically we have relative layout with a text view that is going for a string called hello world. Let's change these into data binding and see how data binding will work. Okay, first of all, we apply the binding to the layout. You see that we changed some things. It's the same layout, but we changed things. First of all, the root tag changed. In the previous case, the relative layout was the root. Sorry, the relative layout was the root tag, and now the root tag is layout. This is a problem because it means that if I've made a layout to be used with data binding, I cannot use it without data binding because normal inflator would say, I don't like this. I don't know if they will fix it or not, or if you use it or not use it, do not mix things. Okay, so we have this root tag layout, it has no tags, and then we have two parts, a data tag and the layout itself. This relative layout, there is only one change that I will explain you later, but basically it's the same that we had before. And then we have this data. The data is used to tell to the data binding how the information will be moved from source code to the UI. We declared a variable. A variable is just an object that we are telling to the data binding, hey, this layout will receive this object. This object will be called data, it's just a random name, and it will be based on this class, com.setcontentview.hello data binding, view data, okay? Okay. And the next thing is that we do one binding. And the format of the binding is always at curly braces and whatever you want to say. In this case, what we're doing is I want you to put here the hello message member from the data object. Oh, what's the data object? The data object is the one, it's a variable that you receive that it's of type view data. Okay, it's more or less clear. Okay, so we have our layout ready. Let's create a data binding object. I'm showing you two ways of creating this data binding object. This is the object that will fit the layout. This will be the data object. We can have a public member, like in this case I have a public string hello message with a constructor. Okay, no, sorry. So basically I will create this object, I will give the message to the object via constructor. We can use setters, constructor, whatever we want, and then we'll feed the binder with this object. The other way, it's having this member private and making a getter. The data binding library is smart enough to say, okay, if in the binding of the layout you say data.helloMessage, I have to look for a method called getHelloMessage. So we are, with this, Android is moving into this convention over configuration, saying in a way, if you do things this way, you write a lot less of code. You can use, of course, another method and then do the binding manually, blah, 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 but why, if this is okay? Okay, now in the activity, we will perform the binding. First of all, through the data binding util, we call Setcontentview. This is a different Setcontentview than the one from the activity. Sorry. Basically, we say who will be responsible of, sorry, I'm wrong. We will send the context and the layout, and it will do a normal inflate. Then we create, sorry, some rules about this class, activity main binding. This class is auto-generated on compilation. So if you created your layout, you need to do a make in order to create this class. You need to compile the project. It's always the name of the layout with proper case. For example, layout was called activity lowercase underscore main, and now it's called activity main in camel case, plus the word binding. It generated compilation. As I said, you must make the project before using it. When I made this presentation, it only worked with a Canary version, and it was 1.4 RC3. The day before the presentation, they published 1.4. So now it works with the latest stable version. As I said, it was just published. And you must use Java 1.7. It won't work with 1.6. Okay? You know that you can use both. But if you are still using 1.6 for compilation, that normally it's not a problem, the data binding won't work. It's only with 1.7. You can force the use of 1.7 with that text in your manifest. Okay. Okay. Now we create our data object as the small class that we created. We give it the string. We make a get string of the hello world, and finally we make the binding. At this moment, what it does is, okay, I have my layout. I parse it and I build it during the Setcontentview, and now you're giving me the object I was expecting. So what I will do is I will go through all the references to this object, and I will fill the data. Okay? It's important to understand that now it happens in two steps. First inflation, and then data filling. Because what I can do is I can change this object, and I can call set data again. And then the information will change. And it works. It's not visible, but it shows hello world. That was really exciting. No, it's boring. Basically, I do a lot more of code just to do exactly the same that it was doing without any kind of writing code. But there are a lot more things that we can do. This was just to understand you the process. So the process should be clear. We define a layout with some input objects. We define the binding through these objects. Then we go to the code, create the binder of that activity or fragment or whatever we want, and then we feed the binder with the data object, and the magic will happen. But there are a lot more things that we can do. For example, this is similar than before. Okay, we have a data section with a variable. In this case, I'm calling it product, and it's based on class product. Oh, that P should be uppercase. The last product should be with uppercase P because it's a class. And for example, in the bottom we're using product.isOffer. That's exactly the same view. But if you check what we're doing in the image view, we're saying, oh, is this product offer? If yes, visibility will be visible. Otherwise, it will be gone. Every time we do the set data and we provide the object, this can change. The visibility can change. So now we are saving code. We don't need to do any more of this code. If this is no, it's automatically done. But as both visible and gone are from the class view, we need to tell to the data binding that we need this class. So we perform an import. Import is just be aware that this class exists. This can be used for static methods and for static fields. Okay. So for example, if we, instead of doing the if here, we can have, I don't know, the product dot get visibility, and then we give the product. But maybe this get visibility is a static method. So if we only want to use a static method, we can do it through an import, and then we'll import the class as a static object. Another example. In this case, I import a class called stringUtils. It's my own class with some state, the typical util class. And what we do here, see, for example, we are calling stringutils.getFormatCurrency based on product price and product currency. Okay, so all the data formatting is happening at this level. Or for example, another case, it will be, okay, call stringutils.get. See, I pass the price, that it will put dots and commas to the price, and then concatenate the product currency. We are concatenating two strings. You see the difference between these two methods, right? One is just I'm calling a function with two parameters. The other one is I'm calling a function, getting the result, and concatenation. So what we see is that we can use binding to create expressions and to do some kind of interface logic. Sorry. We can also, what happens when we have an include? You know that with include, we can just put one layout inside of the another. It's easy. We have my layout, it receives a variable, and then in the include I just say, hey, receive this object. Because the target layout, the layout slash header, is also waiting for an object. So we can feed it from here. Check that in that case I'm using the XML, the namespace is called bind, not Android. Are these examples clear? Oh, merge doesn't work. You need to use include instead of merge. These are the list of operators, okay? Mathematical, concatenation, logical, binary, unary, shifting. I don't know, anybody uses shifting anymore? Comparison, instance of, grouping, blah, 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 blah. The null double question mark, this is really cool. What it does is, if you say A double question B, is the same than saying, okay, if A is null, give me B, otherwise give me A. That's really nice. Casting, call method, accessing field, access to arrays. I will show an example later on, but I'm not going to talk a lot about arrays because it gives content for another speech because it's really complex. And the ternary operation, the question mark, and the whole point. About listing. In this case, for example, I'm importing the sparse array, the list, the stuff. I'm receiving some list, but in this case, keep in mind that I'm using a generic here. It's a list of type string, but as this is XML, the less than symbol should be put as an entity. Okay, it's a bit pain in the ass because I saw some examples of real complex, and using entities never makes things easier. And in this case, for example, we can do this Android text equals list index, and maybe index is an object also received. So the UI is able to receive a list of objects and pick up one of them. Sparse arrays, list index, dictionaries, whatever. Okay, then if we want to be able to modify the objects once everything is inflated, sorry, I'm really cold. We have to use what is called an observable object. Do not get confused with RxJava. This has nothing to do with RxJava, with RxJava observables. It's something completely different. So basically, our data object, the data object that we're providing to the binding, should extend the base observable class. And when we define the methods, we should say that they are bindable with an annotation. Okay, if instead of methods we use public fields, we just put the annotation on the public field. It's the same. And then we create the setters. And what we say is, okay, whenever I do set name, you will change the name on the object, but also you will notify that a properties change. Sorry, I always forgot that I do these remarks to explain things. We have two getters with the bindable. And in order to say what property has changed, but we need to use an object called BR. It's similar to the R, but it's for the binding resources. It's generated on compilation. I mean, it's magic, like the R object. But it's a way to notify which one we want to change. In that case, because we'd say the name is bindable, we can it will create the name in the BR class. Once we do this, we are able to update the interface without doing the binding again. Anytime we change this object, the interface will be updated. Okay, information will be changed, things will be visible, gone, okay. Keep in mind that we can use data binding in any property, or almost any property. We have also, in order to make this thing easier, because frankly this is a lot of boilerplate, we have what is called observable fields. In this case, we're using an observable field of type string. We just say, okay, we have this observable field string name, that it's a new observable field. We have also observable int, long, parcelable, a lot of them, just to make it even faster. This code will do exactly the same than this one. Okay. The difference is how you access the object. I don't like this part. You don't say product.setStock. You say product.stock.sec.get or product.nameSet, whatever. Because now this observable field is not a string anymore. It's observable field object. So it has this setter getter. I don't like this thing, but it's how it works. As I said, when binding library looks for a field, changes things, but what it tries to do is to do a match between the field that we are changing in the XML and the method that should be called. For example, in .NET, the binding is much easier because .NET clearly separates between properties, events, and methods. But in Java, it's not the case. So when we say $100text equals and do a bind, what it will do is look for a method called setText. If the method doesn't exist, it won't work. But there are some cases in Android, because Android is a bit messy sometimes with how the things are done. Well, a lot of times it's messy, but in this case, that changing properties is not a simple set name of the property. It's something more difficult. For example, imagine that we want to bind the property padding left. We don't have a set padding left. We have a set padding when you receive the 4 values for padding. So it won't work out of the box. What we have to do is in our object, in our data object, we have to create what is called a binding adapter. Basically, it's a method, okay, that it's, no, I never remember which ones have the right things and which one not. Through the annotation binding adapter, we say, okay, we're gonna tell you what to do when somebody tries to modify the property padding left. We create a method. In this case, I call it set padding left, but as we do the binding through the annotation, it can have any name. And we receive 2 parameters, the view and an integer. And basically what we do is we call the set padding method from this view, passing the value and the current values for the rest of paddings. The example is quite simple. This is very powerful. We can do a lot of things with this because we can have multiple parameters. For example, this is an example I copied from Google that what it's doing, it's trying to use Picasso through binding. So what it does, it says, okay, image view, this is the image URL, and up error, this is the... keep in mind that, I want to get down from here, sorry. You can use, for example, also references to resources. What's the difference between making this as a binding or not? That if I make it as a binding, I can receive it in the method as a parameter. So I'm binding here 2 parameters, and I'm making a binding adapter with two parameters. Okay. So in that case, what I'm doing is telling to Picasso, okay, load this image, and if it fails, show this another image. This is just a URL. This is a static image. In that case, no. Keep in mind that if I create another image view with app image URL, but not with app error, it won't fit this function. If I use more than 1 parameter, then it will only work for views with more than 1 parameter. But I can create 2 bindings. One when I have both things, and another one when I have only 1 thing. Okay, that could be quite complex at the end. But you cannot use it for custom namespaces yet. Only for Android namespaces. Okay, there are a lot more things. It's a really big topic. We have converters. Converters, it's similar to adapters, but converters tells to the system how change from one value to another. For example, I can have a converter that I provide a date, and it returns a string fully format, depending on some things. How the rates and lists are being handled. Okay, it's a lot of things. I mean, These examples I put are easy. Now try to create a recycler view with this. Wow. Views tabs. You know what views tabs are? Basically, you can create it's a group that you can say, okay, this is a views tab, and what it does is that it doesn't inflate it until we access it. When you have a big layout with optional sections, it's a good idea to put each one inside of a views tab. So in the inflation, not everything is created. But when we're doing data binding, we have to handle in a different way, because this section will be binded in the when the views tab is created, not when the whole view is created. Dynamic variables. We can have do binding and specify as dynamic, and it will change by itself depending on some things. But there's no space for everything. This is quite new. I mean, everybody who's looking at it, even myself, are trying to understand what things can we do with this, how it works. Well, the library by itself is not giving two-way binding, but you can do it. There are tricks to do it. It needs a bit of code, but it can be done. There is a lot of people talking about this. If you're interested in the topic, look for articles. There are a lot of articles of people explaining, oh, I did this trick using data binding with this method. I use this. I mean, it's brand new. I will say that it's okay to play with it, but it's maybe a good idea to wait until some really smarter people than me, are able to make solutions or explain patterns on how to work with this. Talking about patterns, the last topic I'm going to just scratch is about patterns. Okay. The good thing about data binding is that it allows us to use model view model. Okay. I tried to start with iOS development something like a year ago. I hate Objective-C. I was unable to do it. Well, everybody hates Objective-C. It's ugly language. But a thing that I like from Apple is that even in the first tutorial, they are telling you this is model view controller. Follow this pattern. When you start in Android, it's a jungle. There are no clear patterns. In fact, the patterns proposed by Android, by Google, are not the best ones in the world. So people started to make MVC, Model View Controller, but Model View Controller is not really into Android. It doesn't fit well. So now the trending is Model View Presenter, but now we can use Model View Model. So what's the difference between all of them? Basically, as you see, the graphics are similar. The difference between controller view, model view controller, basically we have something called the controller, receives a request from the user or has to start a screen, goes to the model, asks for information, and then returns a view. That's very typical on web, for example. The model view presenter is different. We have the problem in Android is that we don't have a controller, because the activity is part of the view, and it's the first thing to be started. So in the case of MVP, first the view is created, and the view requests for a presenter that we tell the view how to do the things. And the presenter is able to go to the model to retrieve data. I mean, why this change? Because all of us have seen or even made activities with 3,000 lines, and it's messy, and there's a lot of logic in the activities. So MVP was a good model. But now we can have model view model that is even better. I saw you some samples of big applications using model view model, and the activity code or fragment, it has only 4 methods: on create, on stop, on pause, and on resume. Nothing else. And it's like the right way. In this case also the view is started, then the view knows its view model, it asks for a view model, and the view model contains both the UI logic and the UI information. That's why it's called view model. And then the view model goes to the model, gets information, and through data binding, through the binding, the UI is filled, modified, set, whatever. Also, the polarity of relationships, who goes from one side to another, one view, one presenter, one view model, several views. Though I don't recommend this, because if you start using view models for more than one view, they get really big and messy. But that's the theory. Again, there will be people talking at these, there will be people making examples. If you go to my GitHub, there's the link at the beginning. I made a simple example of data binding with just the hello view to be used as playground to play with it. I'm starting to create a big example using clean architecture and model view model, Dagger. I mean, like a real example in order to start exploring how things should be done. So you are happy to, I will be happy if you follow, fork, contribute, participate, in order to explore how this should work and be ready to use it when it's version 1. So final thing about the view model. Do not put business logic on the view model. Never, ever, never. I mean, in this case, for example, what I'm doing in the product says, okay, if product is, well, when it says visibility, it should say text, sorry. Oh, in this text view, if the product is an offer, I will show 15% discount. Otherwise, I won't show nothing. This is business logic, not UI logic. Okay, we don't have to do this. To the view model, the data that should arrive is the final number, not conditions. Okay, again, a lot of people will talk about this. I'm sure the Uncle Bob will say something about that, blah blah blah. But be careful with that, because this is really powerful, and everybody's seen Spider-Man, and we know what happens with great powers. Okay, and could be this is a bit messy to debug. I mean, data binding is not easy to debug, but maybe they will release some tools. But if you start to put business logic here, you will be dead. Okay, so that's all I'm going to explain today. If you have any question, anything you want to know, yes, no. Anybody understood anything? Do you dare to use it, data binding? Okay, somebody's nodding their heads. Okay, so no questions? Okay. Okay, so thanks for all. And I'm free. It's a bit sweetie.
So we're talking about development today, about a lot of technologies, but all those technologies have one thing in common: they need to be tested. So we have lots of methods of testing. We can have developers testing with continuous integration, automatic testing. You can have someone just testing it manually. You can have a monkey, which is what sometimes I believe some of you have. A monkey just pressing the button. If I press it 100 times, it fails. Thank you. Every user will do that. So I'm a bit, I don't know. It's my boss, my quality boss, insurance boss. So Miriam, can you go on stage and not tell people that I have a lot of bugs, please? So let's see what she says about me.